Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Boogie Board Tiki Bar. Today, I am delighted to be joined by Ian Lazurus. He's the VP of Business Operations at Zippy. He is a fellow Austinite with me here in Central Texas, where it's preparing to be cold. Ian, how are you hanging in there with these frigid temperatures?
So far, so good. We'll see what tonight brings. I live on an old home that's all on beams, so the ground is very cold, and my whole place is pretty cold. But we'll make do with it for the 2 days out of the year that we have a actual winter in Texas.
And you're one of the rare people around town that is from Austin, right? You grew up here?
Yes, yep. Went to high school out in Lakeway. Went to Lake Travis High School.
Awesome. So if I'm talking to a young Ian running around playing sports at Lake Travis High School, I imagine he does not know that he wants to get into the world of go-to-market yet. RevOps is maybe not a thing in his mind. What does he want to be when he grows up?
Yeah, that's a great question. I grew up in the restaurant and hospitality industry, so I probably would have followed that footpath. My dad owned restaurants. I grew up, going in, cleaning the dishes, doing a bunch of different stuff. So that was probably going to be my charted course. But as I got older, closer towards high school and college, I had an older brother that was in finance. So I went the finance route post college and did about 4 years of investment banking and private credit. And then I ultimately switched to go to market. But I wish I knew more about go to market and startups when I was in high school. So a big advocate for guiding people down that path versus the typical path, I guess, when I was going through college, which was the finance route for some.
Of all those the restaurant jobs that you held, which one is your least favorite of all the restaurant gigs?
Probably cleaning the dishes, but I didn't have to do it that long. But it was, it was, cool to pop in and out and do what I needed, do what I needed to do to help out. So, but yeah, cleaning the dishes was definitely an interesting one.
I had to clean dishes for a brief period when I was in I don't even think I was in high school yet. And I remember my parents had a rule that I could never quit a job, but I had to sit them down. And I was like, I don't think I can do this. They let me quit that one.
Yeah, this was young. I think, again, it was while I was stopping in a place. So it's not like I was doing it, even a full shift. I think I might have been in elementary school, maybe early middle school when I remember cleaning the dishes one day.
Well, that's good stuff. And so how did you end up at the University of Chicago?
Yeah, great question. So I really wanted to go play football in college. So I was looking at some of the Ivy Leagues, but, unfortunately was a little bit too short as a 5'9" outside linebacker. But I was heavily recruited by some, and it just didn't come to fruition. And, ended up at University of Chicago. Coaches would go to the same Ivy League camps. And, one of the coaches was touring around Texas and reached out and came for a house visit and, ended up recruiting me to go to the University of Chicago, which actually, albeit it's a D3 school, actually has a lot of rich football history, has the first Heisman Trophy winner in 1925 by Jay Bernwanger. Actually, this is very timely given the national championship tonight. It's the only team to be undefeated against Notre Dame, so we're 4-0 against Notre Dame.
Love that.
No other team, from my understanding, someone told me that, I think when I was on my tour or freshman year, but from my understanding, I think that's true. So let's just stick with it. Only team to be undefeated against Notre Dame. So yeah, it was a different college experience, great college experience, but I was always kind of focused on, playing football in college and, going to a good school as well. So, I was very thankful and happy I went there. Great college experience, great education, hard education, and I really met a lot of great friends for a lifetime. So it was a very rewarding experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. And so you had entrepreneurial parents, and then you're going to play college athletics. Clearly, there's some grit in your life there. Was it still a big transition? Because you then went into investment banking, right? And obviously that has a certain culture to it. Can you take me through what it's like for you coming out of school and entering that world?
Yeah, the culture definitely is true. It was intense at times. There'd be, it was certainly intense. You would work a lot of weekends, work Friday till 9, you'd come in Saturday, sometimes at 10, work till 10. There's definitely a lot of ebbs and flows. There's a lot of groups. I was in a capital markets group, so there's a lot of more industry driven groups. So like our consumer group or the industrials group, at least at my bank, that were very, very intense. Where you're working 12 plus hour days every day. I still had to work, late nights and a good amount of weekends, both Saturday and Sunday, but it definitely could have been more intense relative to others, but it definitely holds up to what people say about it. It's, no fun working till 2 a.m. and then getting back in there at 9 a.m. and working until 2 a.m. again. So yeah, it was definitely grind work, definitely grunt work too.
And how about the actual work that you're doing during that time? Did you enjoy the investment side of the world? Because I know you do investing now as well, but you're a young kid out of college. Did you enjoy the actual work?
No, not really. You're really just making PowerPoint presentations and doing some, Excel modeling, and it's really just making PowerPoint presentations, and you're just an order taker and coordinating data rooms and all that stuff. So I didn't enjoy the work. I think I mentioned before, I wish I would have looked more into startups, but I just feel like when I went to school, a lot of people are all about investment banking. And I guess kind of my background was going for like, the Ivy League academia route. A lot of people went into investment banking. My older brother did. So, I was interested in going down that path. But I really wish I looked at more startups and got into sales or go to market earlier on in my career. From Houlihan Lokey, I went to, a large asset manager, private equity firm, fund of funds. I was on their private credit team. So I went on the investing side of debt and debt-like instrument investments. And I was there for about a year and a half. I still wasn't too fond of the work. I also don't think I was made out for the work. I wasn't great at it. But, when I was at my second job, again, we were primarily a debt investor, and we did a lot of software buyouts.
Mm.
Tome Bravo, Vista, they would come to us because they're going to take take a company private or do a lot of roll-ups. And that's when I started to get introduced to software and SaaS and thinking about distribution and go-to-market strategies, and from a very high level from an investor perspective. So I don't know if you can hear the dogs
You're good.
barking in the background. But yeah, that's where I got introduced, rather than looking at, in finance, you would just look at a plethora of different things. And it also depends on what industry you're grouping, right? I had friends in consumer industry group and industrials industry group. But since I was on the capital market side, I was more of a generalist looking at all different industries. So, it was very rewarding to think about it from an investment perspective, understanding cash flow and the market opportunity, the market growth, and, really how we looked at it more purely from a debt perspective. It is a different modeling from, rather than an equity perspective. But, it brought me to where I was. So I'm thankful of that. And it was, definitely a different type of work that kind of helps prepare you to be able to weather, whatever storm you want to with work, but definitely find more value in the stuff I'm doing now than I did then.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a valuable lens through which to view software. Because so many of us, like me, that came up through software, you almost didn't think as much about some of the fundamentals of business, if that makes sense. You didn't view it through an investment lens; it was strictly a growth lens for a period of time. So I think having that viewpoint is interesting. And then I want to hear how you actually then made the jump from what you were doing and decided to say, okay, I'm going to go and actually get in the mix here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got connected to a few random recruiters, and I was applying to a bunch of different jobs. I was looking to go be, an SDR, right? Not many people were going to take a bet on someone, even though I was 4 years out of school, to go be an account executive or anything like that. It was a grind for a while. I got turned down from a lot of opportunities. Fortunately for me, kind of joke about it when they hired me, I was laughing because they were taking a bet on me. They were laughing because they're like, why is this guy Ian, leaving his finance job to come work here? But I ended up joining QuadPay early on, which, QuadPay was an early buy now, pay later company in the US. And, I joined there as a fourth employee. I was the first SDR, pre-revenue, pre-product. The team, the founding team was familiar with, how prominent BNPL, Afterpay, and the likes of that, ZipPay were in Australia and in the Kiwis and New Zealand too. So the idea was kind of a first mover advantage, try and, beat them coming into the US. I'll never forget, David Sykes, who's now the global chief commercial officer for Klarna, was like, this is so big in Australia. It's going to happen here. It's going to happen here. And, here I am like, I really want to get out of my finance job. I'm about to take a 50% pay cut, going to go make, more than 50% pay cut, go to make 55K as an SDR and get a little bit of bonus to join a 4-person startup that has no revenue, no product, no nothing. The first day I show up, we're deciding how we're going to go to market. So it was, they were laughing about it because they're like, oh, we get someone coming from the private debt space, they might be familiar with credit, we're doing consumer lending. It just kind of came to be. Yeah, there was a tough sledding for a bit. I got turned down from a decent amount of opportunities when I was looking at startups, and fortunately, I just picked the right one, at that time, and it was a very rewarding experience, and got to see a lot, and it was a great entrance into the startup and go to market space.
Yeah, what made it the right one for you? I so respect that you're willing to take a step back and not only take a pay cut, but you got to sign up as an SDR. I did that work. It's not like you're transitioning into something glamorous. You're smiling and dialing or hitting the email button. So what made it the right place for you?
I think just everywhere that it's taken me to this point. I mean, I've bounced around a lot. I think I'm on my sixth or seventh job, and I'm turning 33 this year. Yeah, it's kind of the whole road of where it's brought me. It was beneficial that it was a product that really sold itself. It's beneficial that the market just grew to what it was, and the people I met along the way there. Time at QuadPay really helped set me up for my time at Klarna as a U.S. Chief of Staff. I ended up leaving QuadPay to join this other company as their second revenue hire to lead their go-to-market channel efforts. I was actually recruited over there by the SVP of revenue, who was actually running revenue for a company I was interviewing before QuadPay, who ended up passing on me, and him and I stayed in touch. And,
Nice.
He ended up bringing me on board to lead the channel efforts at the second startup I worked at. And yeah, that company had a tough time with COVID. They ended up letting go most of the revenue team during COVID, because we were selling pre-tax benefits to the hospitality space, which was obviously impacted by COVID. And again, fortunately for me, I was able to rejoin forces with folks at Klarna. QuadPay was also acquired, so that was a benefit as well for picking a startup that was acquired. I would have made a lot, probably would be in a lot different position, made a lot more money if I stuck around there and invested more equity. But again, it's all been a stepping stone of my career, and has taken me, to where I am today, which I'm very thankful for. And I've learned something new at every company I've been at, and I've evolved a lot at every company I've been at.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about what a U.S. Chief of Staff does at Klarna, because I would imagine a large role, a broad role, a role with a lot of visibility for a fast growing company like that. What was your position like at Klarna? What did you actually do?
I would say it was a jack of all trades type stuff. I mean, I helped lead a lot of strategic work. We reallocated our go-to-market team around this concept of a cross-functional, geolocated merchant success teams. So I led a lot of that work while I was there for a year. Worked really closely with David Sykes, just helped with a lot of different stuff. But my primary focus was like the whole go-to-market realignment to, locate these cross-functional teams near retailers where retailers are based. So you had teams in New York, Ohio, there's teams in the Northwest now near Nike and Adidas and the big players up there, and teams all along the West Coast. So there's a big go-to-market realignment type work that took a couple months to execute. And, that strategy really helped Klarna adopt and evolve throughout those years, and continue through, the years since I left, as, a way that best supported, the brands and retailers that they worked with, which helped lead to the exponential growth. And then there's just a bunch of other random stuff, that I was helping with, but that was kind of my primary focus of that go-to-market realignment.
What prompts you to start investing? It looks like around that time you were getting involved with Halo Labs and starting to either write some angel checks, or maybe you can tell us about, what interested you in that work, what type of companies you like to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. So Halo Labs, I'm fortunate to be involved there. It was started by a good buddy of mine. It's a syndicate that, we have access to Y Combinator deals. So, we get they're out in San Francisco. One of the founders of Halo Labs, or I think two of them, were in YC themselves. So, they know the landscape, know the people. And, it's been really cool for them to do all the legwork that they do of, reaching out, engaging with these founders, while they're in YC leading up to demo day. I really don't have, rhyme or reason to how I invest or when I invest. It's pretty funny. I think, there was one text thread with one of the guys that runs it, and he literally said one sentence, I said another sentence back, he said a third thing, and I'm like, all right, I'm in. So like it isn't, there isn't a rhyme or reason or a method to the madness. It's it's probably not the best way one should invest, but it's more of just a gut feel of stuff. But I've enjoyed it. I've whenever one of the founders are ready, the Halo Labs syndicate managers typically introduce me as someone that can talk go to market. So I've done that with 3 or 4 of the founders that Halo Labs or myself have invested in, and I have kind of exposure to different industries, electric charging stations in India, AI agents for KYC and onboarding, did AI for stoplights. That recent one I announced around about technologies, something fleet management services for satellites. And, there is some HR tech in there as well. So it's, broad spectrum of stuff, but anything that just sounds interesting. And yep, it's really good.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it keeps you in the mix, if nothing else, and sounds like it's based on the relationships that you've built, which I think is a great way to get into things. I'm curious about your own startup venture with Neutral. I was looking at it earlier this morning. It looks like a pretty cool concept. I was wondering if you could tell that story.
Yeah, absolutely. So Neutral came about when I was speaking with some investors I know, and we decided to incubate a concept that we saw that was in the space already. It was similar to my background with BNPL. There's a concept out there, but the idea was just to do it better, do it faster, and it was something I was aligned with as well, with climate activism. It's funny how it came to be, because actually before that I was thinking, I've always been obsessed with distribution, wedges, bringing a concept to market. And I was actually thinking about starting an employee benefit company, because I spent a year out of Alice, which was in the HR tech space, which was automating pre-tax benefits. So I got familiar with the payroll landscape, the benefit landscape, PEOs, like all of that. So, in periods of, ideally record low unemployment or low unemployment, it's a great way to scale a concept, right? Because if you partner with payroll providers, millions of people, some of these payroll providers, for example, I remember there's this one, they're called service bureaus in the payroll space. They license out software from Ultimate Kronos, but the one payroll provider in the Northwest ran payroll for 1 million people. So, I just thought it was a great distribution, a great wedge to bring a concept to market. So I originally wanted to bring a carbon offsetting consumer education app platform to the employee benefit space.
Interesting.
So I was toying around with that idea while I started to talk with this group, and saw some others doing the carbon offsets at point of sale while shopping online, and was like, all right, I've done this before with BNPL. I know the playbook to run. It seems like it can be the exact same strategy from buy now, pay later. And so hence, Neutral was born. Ended up raising 1.5 million, grew the team to about 10, 11 people. End up partnering with 80 or so merchants, 5 merchants. But I mean, we were talking to some of the largest retailers in the country. I mean, it was pretty exciting. Some of the folks that we were talking to, won't mention the names, but we were talking to some very, very large retailers about providing carbon offsets at point of sale. So it was a very great experience. The concept seemed like a great idea at the time. I learned a lot from it. It wasn't that great of a business, right? You're keeping cents on the dollar. Now that I'm, through it, in retrospect, in theory, ideally most of the dollars should be going towards a project anyway. So can projects scale, in order to reach magnitude where you don't need this kind of broker in between consumers or brands, to buy these offsets, in reality, like a brand can just add anything, $1, right? Like we were estimating the emissions associated with shipping an order, right? And using some factors on what the order was made to like give more of an accurate price. But at the same time, what's the difference between 75 cents and $1.50? Why not just give someone the option to add $1 or $2? Does it have to be accurate, right? So, hopefully some of the players in the space can still figure it out. But, I had this grand vision of how I wanted to turn Neutral into a very similar experience like Klarna buy now, pay later, kind of this whole pre-purchase, post-purchase platform marketplace experience. But, market kind of turned in 21 when I was going to raise again. And again, now that I'm through it, it's like, I have a lot more appreciation for sustainable and scalable businesses, even though it's, the vision that I had for it was something that I'm still envious of wanting to build. And
Yeah.
yeah, pause here if you have any more questions on that.
Well, I appreciate you sharing the story. I can resonate with, having this precise solution and then recognizing that you actually needed to keep it simple, which is always hard for anybody who is a technologist. So then how do you end up at Zippy? I think Zippy is a really cool concept. It looks like, you're running a lot of things related to growth and kind of the biz ops there. So maybe you could tell us about your experience at Zippy.
Yeah. So one of my investors at Neutral is actually an investor at Zippy. So that's how I got connected to the founders there. He's also a good friend. And so it was, pretty natural introduction. But I joined the folks at Zippy just over 2 years ago, and we provide mortgages for the manufactured home space. So, this market has been materially underserved by financing providers, since its inception, 20, 30 years ago. There are a few dominant players in the space, that are really just backed by Berkshire Hathaway. And so the idea with Zippy is to, really disrupt, the lending, that targets and caters to manufactured housing, which is, it's a special type of lending called chattel lending. The whole vision for Zippy is, there's a 4 million unit housing shortage in the US. And, the idea is that manufactured homes will be a big unlock and provider, to solve that housing shortage when it comes to the affordable housing crisis in the US. And fair and transparent lending is a key way to access that, right? People aren't going to build a bunch of manufactured homes if it's hard to fill those homes. It's hard to fill those homes for various reasons, but also a lot of consumers may not want to buy those homes for various reasons. But one key gap is it's really hard for them to resell their homes. So that's a big vision of Zippy is, making it easier for them to buy it and making it easier for them to ultimately sell it. At some point, the market is completely broken for, manufactured home transactions, which is unfortunate, especially given the, kind of the demographic that traditionally has been buyers of the space. But everyone should be able to buy and finance a home, and, in hopes to, have that home grow in value. It's not always the case, even with the typical, stick build, but, that's the vision, is to, really use, technology and innovation to make, lending more efficient and practical in, an industry that can help solve the home crisis.
Absolutely. I love that vision. Anybody who's had to experience a home loan in general, I think, can be excited about disruption and a more targeted approach at a specific type of home concept. So I love that. I'm curious. You mentioned you've done a lot of things, right? You've worked in consumer investment banking, different parts of go to market. You've been the lowest on the totem pole. You're now a VP. I'm curious. What are you looking at today? What are you trying to learn when you're educating yourself about the go to market space? Is it figuring out how to use new technology, learning how different roles can be structured within your team? Like, what's top of mind for you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the biggest talk of town right now is AI, right? So how can one leverage AI by any means, whether it's helping you develop things quicker, playbooks, processes, leveraging it to engage with customers. I think, that's a big focus of everyone, and, something I'm, staying on top of as well. I think there's multiple ways that you can apply it to be more effective, and help a team be more effective. So that's certainly something that, I play around with, and I know a lot of others do. Other than that, I'm engaged with revenue communities, communities like Pavilion, and, I'm speaking at the Revenue Operations Summit, which is, a different community group, coming up in 2 weeks. But I think there's an evolution in go to market, right? It's no longer a grow at all cost environment. Now you really need to bring scalable and efficient growth to a go-to-market org, and for
Mhm.
really any startup, there, as I mentioned, new evolution on how to think about sustainable and scalable growth. Now, whether that's, you use AI or by other means, there's still other means without AI to ensure that you have scalable growth. And that's been a lot of my self journey over the past 2 or 3 years with some of the courses I've taken and the webinars I've joined, really creating, they talk about it, a group Winning by Design. They talk about it, the bow tie. I think it, is the future of go to market. So that's something that, read up on a lot and really envious of, wanting to go build, more of a scalable, efficient go-to-market org like that. I think having those real life examples of the coursework is great. Those real life examples, are always fun to actually help build things from the ground up. So I highly recommend people take courses or join communities like that. There's a lot of resources out there. And if you feel stuck and want to learn something or meet people, it's a great way to learn. But yeah, I mean, obviously the future of go-to-market now is efficient and scalable growth. And again, you can do that without AI, but fortunately we have such powerful AI at our fingertips right now that even if you're using it to help you create playbooks or write a revenue handbook, you might as well leverage it in those instances. So there's a lot out there. And, I think, I really think you can't go wrong with some of the stuff you read. I really think all the resources are great resources. I've been fortunate enough to find some really quality content that I follow fairly religiously, and that's been very helpful for me.
Well, Ian, I'm super grateful to you for taking the time to kind of walk us through your career journey and your learnings along the way. I'm curious, just as a final question, it sounds like you're a football guy. If you have a prediction for the score for tonight's game, this is we're taping this on the night of the college football championship.
Yeah, the score for the game tonight. Wish I knew what the actual line was for the over under.
We can check.
I don't.
We can check.
Yeah.
This is good podcasting.
I know Ohio State's favored by 8.
Ohio State 8.5, over under at 45.5.
45.5. All right, I will go with, let's say, I do think Ohio State's gonna take it to them. Let's go with 35. Go with 35-24. I think it's going to go over. I think Ohio State's going to have a high-flying game.
That's a fun one to watch. So I'm all for that. And if you get it right, we're going to do really well on LinkedIn. So I appreciate you willing to make the prediction.
All right, sweet.
Thanks so much, Ian.
Yep, thanks, Kevin.